Hello, this is Greg Mannion here with the Infinite Breath podcast on addiction stories. And today we've got Jennifer Seaman. Is that right? Has I said the name right?
Yep.
We met about 15 months ago in Florida when I was traveling around doing workshops everywhere. And you hadn't really tried breath work before, but you had a go. And yeah, we've been in contact since. And a friend of yours is now doing the breathing course as well, the coaching course. Just want to say then, in 1 minute, more or less, give people an idea of who you are, what's going on in your life at the moment.
I am Jennifer. I'm a mom of 3 girls, a wife as well, and I work here in Sarasota, Florida at a pediatric chiropractic office working with special needs families and others who are looking to change their health through balancing their nervous system.
Perfect. All right. Well, look, what we do normally at the beginning here, I've got like 10 quick fire questions. They're not too deep, but they're just little questions. And I want you to, if you can get through them in 1.5 minutes. So essentially what comes into your mind, just say what it is, gives people an idea of who you are. Okay. 10 questions. Here we go. Question number 1. What is your idea of perfect happiness?
Equanimity, internal, just a peace where my outside world doesn't shake that.
Gotcha. Beautiful. Okay. Next one. What place would you most like to visit?
Somewhere warm and sunny, tropical beach, an island somewhere. The Caribbean. Do what?
You got to come to Thailand.
Yeah, Thailand came to mind. Bali comes to mind. There's a couple other places that have been top of the list. Beautiful.
Okay. What is your favorite color?
Costa Rica.
Costa Rica.
My favorite color?
Yeah.
Oh, my favorite color. I hate this question. I don't have a favorite color. I believe like it depends on if we're talking about a car or a piece of clothing, or like I really love all colors.
Okay.
If I am forced to pick one, some purple is right up there, but I also love black.
Purple and black, bring it on, just like the show. Okay, cool. One thing that you like about yourself?
Uh-oh, you froze. Can you still hear me okay?
I can still hear you, yeah.
Okay, good. One thing that I like about myself, first thing that comes to mind is just my ability for the growth and healing that I've had over the last 12, 13 years.
Beautiful. Okay, beautiful. Do you believe in God?
I got my understanding, higher power.
Gotcha. Beautiful.
Got us.
Okay. What talent would you most like to have?
Play the piano.
Nice. Okay. If you could be called by any other name, what would you like to be called by? I know, it's a weird one.
Anything. Celeste.
Celeste. I like it. I like it. Okay. What is your favorite song at the moment? What's going around in your world at the moment, music-wise?
I Am by Satsang.
I Am by Satsang. Okay, I'll find it afterwards. Or you can send it to me and I'll put it in the comments below.
Okay. All right.
And what is your favorite swear word?
The F word. Am I allowed to say it? Fuck.
You can say what you want. F word. Okay, let's stick with F word. Okay. Final question. What is your motto on life?
You're never alone. You're never alone. That we're all connected and we're all in this together and we're never alone.
I really like that. Very nice. Very nice. All right. Thank you very much. We got through them pretty quick. That's good. Just a little get to know you. Okay. So essentially, yeah, I call it stories because addiction stories, if we can go back a little bit as far as you want to go and tell us where you come from, what was going on in your life, maybe some of the reasons and things that have added to some addictive behaviors that you've had, where that took you, what happened, the change, and then how it feels now, essentially, you know, and just fly away.
All right.
Hope you've frozen a little bit.
Pretty far just a little bit to childhood, because I do feel like it's an important part of my story. I was raised in a Baptist home. My dad was a Baptist minister. So I had a very, very strict upbringing, not around any drugs or alcohol at that time. And I do feel like my really super strict upbringing has a lot to do with the person that I became and am today. But I'll move fast forward. Hadn't really been around drugs and alcohol. I graduated high school and met someone, and I fell in love, and very, very quickly. But I was kind of, I think, very early on addicted to relationships. I was a serial dater or marrier. Like anybody I dated, I got engaged to. And with that being said, I got married at 19 the first time, and that was my second engagement. So I definitely feel like that's like that addiction stuff that's in there. Do what?
Attachment, maybe?
Yes, attachment, exactly, codependency. So I got married very young, and he was a bit older than I was, and was into drugs and alcohol, and kind of had my first experiences in that world, and very quickly found a place that made me feel a little bit more like I belonged, and not like such of a weirdo. With being raised so super strict, I dressed different than everyone around me up until the age of like 15. I hadn't listened to rock and roll. I wasn't allowed to wear, regular clothes that all the other girls were wearing. Didn't go to concerts or watch TV. So I felt very alienated at times as far as like what the other teens were doing, other kids were doing. And then, switching to this world, there was a lot of other differences within as well. I was a very super sensitive person, and everything that went on in the world affected me emotionally in a very big way. And the people that I hung around with, that's kind of not how they were, and they didn't experience. So I was always seen as being too sensitive, and I cried too easily, and I reacted to things around me in a way that nobody else did. And drugs and alcohol shielded me from that. When I started using, it was a very slow progression. It started with really just drinking a little bit and smoking a little bit of pot, and then kind of the acclimation slowly into that world. And I started using cocaine and ecstasy in huge quantities throughout my early 20s to mid 20s. Wasn't ever really comfortable in that lifestyle as far as deep down. I always had a voice that was telling me, this isn't right, this isn't who you are, this is not where your happiness is. But externally, like I kept doing it. I was in a relationship that really perpetuated a lot of those behaviors. I did reach a point where I knew I wanted to make some really big changes, and was not happy with the person that I was and who I'd become, and knew in order to quit the drugs, I needed to get out of that relationship. So I had made the decision to do that, and I myself had quit the drugs. I didn't group alcohol into that category at that time.
Right, yeah.
So I was still drinking, and then I did find out I was pregnant, and I hoped that that would kind of change the marriage and change the dynamic, and it didn't. And so I, through the pregnancy, of course, I had remained abstinent of drugs and alcohol, and I had my first daughter at 27, and then 9 months later, me and her father split. And that was a really, really huge thing in my life. With my upbringing being what it was, I had got married as a commitment for life. It was a huge failing that I really took on very seriously. And although I had said I'd never do drugs again, like I said, alcohol was not a part of that. So through our divorce, I remained drinking, and very heavily. The alcohol consumption definitely increased to a very scary place very quickly, and I didn't correlate the two. I didn't group the two of them together. And then in 2002, I was in an auto accident, and it wasn't related to alcohol, and it wasn't a fault of my own even, but I went to the doctor for some injuries, and the very first thing they did was prescribe me narcotics. Heavy dose narcotics, and that was it. It was like someone had given me a green light for addiction. And for the next like 6 years, I got really lost in oxys and roxys and muscle relaxers and alcohol, and anything that I could take to change the way I felt. When I left my first husband, I never did anything about why I was using drugs, about addiction. I never looked at any of it. And so here it had switched. It wasn't street drugs. It was like I was had permission. They were safe because the doctor was giving them to me. But I, was a very functioning addict is what they call it. So I had met someone, and I had remarried, and we had a business, and I had my young daughter, and I volunteered at school, and I was PTA mom, and I had on the outside, external, it appeared like my life was really together. So I was living two lives. The other side of my life was when I would drop her off at school. There was 4 different doctors I was visiting around the state of Florida to fill prescriptions and to get what I needed, and I was selling to be able to finance, my addiction, and my world was complete chaos. I think about my days, what they were like then, crosses my mind sometimes now, and I don't know how I did it. It's unbelievable to me that I was living the double life that I was, and robbing from Peter to pay Paul, this constant juggle of where the next money was going to come from, when I was going to run out, how sick I was going to be, who I was going to have to lie to get what I needed to keep going with this perpetual living this huge lie that I was leading. Early 2009, I had had enough. I had definitely reached my bottom. Financially, I was not going to be able to keep all of the balls in the air any longer. My world was crumbling financially, and internally, I wanted to die. I did not want to live anymore. I was terrified of dying, but I really didn't want to be here. I drove around, and I would look at I would take my seatbelt off. I would look at different concrete abutments and poles and things and think, how fast would I have to go? Could I crash my car so it would be an accident, so my family wouldn't be as devastated, so my young daughter wouldn't know? Could I die? And I was terrified to do that and live, and then be more of a burden to everyone around me. I went so far as to, have a handgun out in my home at one point in time, and really, really to the point where I wanted to end my life. My young daughter was sleeping down the hall. She was 9 years old at that time, and I couldn't do it. But that was like that turning point of knowing I can't do that, but I can't live like this. And I asked for help, which is something through all of the attempts to quit, which over those years from 2002 to 2009 of the prescription drug abuse, I had attempted to quit. I can't even tell you how many times on my own. I would, make it to 4 or 5 days sick as fuck. My husband thinking I had the flu, and I couldn't do it anymore. Errands needed to be run. The daughter needed to be picked up from school. She had activities I couldn't, and I knew what would cure that sickness. And I would think that I could start back and wean myself and just do tiny amounts to keep the sickness at bay and wean down. And as soon as I started again, it was like I had never stopped. And the quantity was enough that I really shouldn't be here today, which I know I'm here for a bigger purpose today, and I'm grateful for that. But I finally asked for help, and I let my husband know the truth of where I was at, what I was doing, where the money was going. I believe I was honest with him, I think to the level that I was capable of that time, but it wasn't until I did a 10-day detox. It was a home detox company that I went to, but I went to a friend's to do it. So I could be alone and not have the responsibilities. We were also having to move at that time because of not being able to pay the rent. And my husband was the one that had to pack up our home by himself. And I think it was really eye-opening. He really had no idea, but he found, bottles and bottles and bottles and all sorts of proof of the quantity. And it was a really good thing, honestly, for him to see how serious it was and how much I had been lying and manipulating the situation. But I had his love and support the whole way through all of it, which I believe is one of the reasons I was able to be successful, was in that early stages that he was so loving and supportive. I went through a 10-day home detox. There was a nurse that came every day to the house and took my vitals and checked on that kind of stuff, but also did some counseling with me by myself and with him and I together. And one of the things the nurse said during that 10 days was, whatever you do, don't go to 12-step programs. It's nothing but a bunch of addicts sitting around telling their stories about who used more. I had never heard of AA and NA at that time, believe it or not, but I was making notes and I was so determined to do what I needed to do. He was a recovering addict, and I was like, well, if this is what he's saying, then this is what I need to do. So no 12-step programs. I made it to 78 days clean and sober, and I was on the edge, and I was like white knuckling it, and I didn't want to use and I didn't want to drink, but I knew I was going to, and I needed help. I tried to find an online support group so that I didn't have to face people, face to face. I was shy and scared, terrified of, I had not lived my life without that shield of drugs and alcohol. I didn't know how to go to the grocery store. I didn't know how to go to the library. I didn't know how to go to my daughter's school without this protection of drugs and alcohol. So I was terrified of meeting other people. So I went online and found a sober Facebook group. There was no activity in it. There hadn't been any activity in it in like 4 months. So I went ahead and introduced myself, and no one responded. It was crickets. But on the sidebar popped up an advertisement for meetings in my area. And I clicked on it, and it took me to an NA meeting. The next morning, it was at Turtle Beach here in Sarasota, which is an absolutely gorgeous spot to hold a meeting. I went, it's called Peace in the Morning. It was a 9 a.m. Saturday morning meeting. I went, drove in the parking lot, turned around, drove out. Got halfway down the street and realized I have to do this, and turned around and drove back and walked into my first NA meeting at 79 days clean and sober, and heard information I'd never heard before, heard stories I'd never known were possible, saw people, pick up key tags for 90 days, 6 months, 9 months, a year. Honestly, anybody who picked up anything over 6 months, I thought they were lying at that time. I honestly couldn't conceive how on earth a person could stay clean from drugs and alcohol and live their life successfully. I couldn't imagine myself doing anything sober. I would drive around and pass a bowling alley, and I would be like, how could you go bowling sober? Not there was anything I couldn't conceive having fun. And I heard these people telling stories, and they had meetings. They went to the bowling alley, and they went to different places for fun activities and played volleyball, so clean and sober, and they appeared to be really having a great time. But they also told their stories of what led them there. And I heard stuff that sounded like where I was, and I listened, and they told me, to shut up and listen. And I did. I was really good at that. And I didn't say anything, and I read the literature, and I listened to the stories, and I got a sponsor, and I was able to put one day, it's after the next, and got 6 months, and then reached a year, and couldn't believe that the literature worked, that the information worked, the meeting together, the connection between these other addicts worked to help me to also be able to quit the drugs and alcohol. I did also learn that was just the tip of the iceberg, and that my problem wasn't drugs and alcohol, and that, I really needed to start working on me and figuring out why I started using drugs and alcohol in the first place. What was the hole I was trying to fill, where those deficits were. And for me, a lot of that led to early childhood trauma. And, definitely, I don't feel like I'm alone in that story. And I do believe a lot of us addicts share those similar experiences. And through NA, I then was able to do some work with someone outside and get some outside help, and continue, working with other addicts, but then incorporating a lot of other things into my world. When I was 18 months clean and sober, I had another daughter, which I had said I would never, ever, ever have any more children. But through the ability to see more clearly and quit the drugs and alcohol, I knew, I mean, that was a longing of mine from when I was little. I always wanted to have a big family and to have multiple children. And so I was able to have another daughter, but she was born and had some really big struggles. And through her, I learned about our food and nutrition and how important what we put in our body and on our body is to our brain health, and how that correlates and ties in to my being able to live a happier, healthier life. And even with the addiction thoughts and tendencies, how being careful of what I consume, both nutrition and what on me, plays a role into that chemical imbalance that we can feel. And the cleaner that I ate, as far as an all organic, gluten-free, dairy-free, clean diet, because of her and her medical needs, what it did for me and what it did for my brain and how it changed. And that led into then a more health and wellness grounded mindset in all areas of my life. You know, disconnecting from television as far as the news, being careful of that input and those toxins. And it just morphed from this addiction, drugs and alcohol, into just being super conscious and aware of everything that I consume and the effects that it has on me. And then through her story, being able to share that with others, her journey and how much healing was able to happen for her. I've been able to work with special needs families, which also has morphed into working some with other struggling addicts, and kind of doing this whole picture, painting this whole picture of, you know, the 12-step programs, I believe, are an absolutely beautiful tool. NA saved my life. I know that today, but I believe that there's steps further that we can do beyond the 12 steps to foster that recovery and to live a life truly where we're supposed to meant to be and who we're supposed to meant to be, and then how we can share that with others and how that resonates with others and sharing that.
Powerful story. But I just want to go back to then the 12-step program. What was like the switch? Because you mentioned something that I got onto early. It took me about a year with 12 steps to actually get into it, and eventually stop and ask for help. That was the key. Ask for help, and you have to knock the ego out, you know. And you go, and many people told me for a long time, get a sponsor, do the thing, and then eventually I sent a message, and he was more than happy, and it was great. But there was that asking for help, and then there was the connection in the rooms. Some people don't get it, and I totally get that they don't get it, because it's definitely not for everyone. For me, it did work because I was at the end of the line. But what did you find in those rooms that made a difference? Was it the steps? Was it the people, or some change in you?
A little bit of all of the above. So when I first got there, I would have said that I was an atheist when I first got there. I wasn't really sure what my relationship with God was, but I felt as if at that point where I was, there must not be at all. And I started hearing them talk about willingness, honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness, the three principles that were crucial to recovery, that if you don't have those three, you can really fucking forget about it. It's not going to happen. And I was willing to do anything. Like, I knew that I couldn't do it on my own. I had tried for a really long time. I saw people that were living a life that appeared to be happy, not using drugs and alcohol. And this is the things that they said they were doing. So I, gratefully so, my higher power gifted me with honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness very quickly. I will tell you, I reached 90 days and I thought I was open-minded and blah, 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 blah. And the God stuff started really, really coming in. And they talked about prayer and meditation, and specifically prayer. And I was really getting hung up. And here I'd been willing to do anything to stay clean, but when it came to prayer, I was like, well, maybe not that. And the longer I stayed and was able to listen, the open-mindedness, and a girl shared, and her name's Jackie, and she was in a meeting, and she shared her frustration about newcomers coming in, you know, ready to do this, and willing to do anything. But then they get a suggestion from the group, and they're like, well, not that. And she said, honestly, when I got here, if you told me to stand on my head and spit nickels, I would have. And it just clicked with me. And I realized I needed to stand on my head and spit nickels. And if that meant pray, then that's what I needed to do. And that I need to listen. There was people in NA from all walks of life. And there were people within NA that were highly religious, God of religion. There were people in NA who were atheist and agnostic. And there was every gamut in between. And I needed to find someone that I related to, that had what I wanted, and see what they were doing and stick with them. And that was that connection piece. And it was that standing on my head and spit nickels, honestly. And I mean, to the point where there were some mornings, as opposed as I was to it, I chose to get out of bed and get on my knees next to my bed. And right there and then, and I used the Serenity Prayer and the third step prayer constantly. The Serenity Prayer got me through the first year. I said it dozens of times a day. There was a point in my recovery that I realized I was only saying the first couple lines of it, that I wasn't completing the end of it. And when I realized that I needed to add the ending on it, not just the ability to accept the things I cannot change, because that's the part I clung to for a while. Because not accepting the things I couldn't change were the things that were going to take me out. And I had a lot of turmoil in my life at that point through that first spouse and a custody situation. And there was a lot that I thought that was the only thing I needed to do, was just accept the things I cannot change, accept the things I cannot change. And then I realized one day, through my sponsors' help and guidance, there's more to it than just accepting the things you cannot change. You know, you gotta continue on with that prayer. And I did say that prayer dozens and dozens of times. And then about a year and a half in, the third step prayer came into my world, and in just like a bolt of lightning. And that take my will in my life, guide me in my recovery, and show me how to live. And starting that my morning, every morning, with that, stepping into that, like, what is your will for my life? And when I say your will, it's the God of my understanding today. And I could read all of the literature and know that there is a power greater than me. There is a force outside of me. Go ahead. And
Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, continue.
And tap into that force. And that force early on in early recovery, the power greater than me was the people in the rooms. Like, if I put all of you together, you were a power greater than me. And so that's what it could be. And when I read the literature and listened to people talk and people use the word God, to me, it was a small g, and it was a power greater than me. And then it was wind, and it was the water, the ocean. I live in Sarasota, Florida. You know, I would go and sit next to the Gulf, and the Gulf of Mexico is a power greater than me. The wind, the trees, nature, and connecting into those things. And that just was like that next step, that next level. And today, I believe that Goddess is in all of us, and that he or she, whichever it is a powerful force that only wants good for me and is not there to punish me. And, that religious upbringing, and for so many of us in the rooms, it's that way, that the God of my early childhood was not a loving, compassionate, kind, understanding, wanting the best for Jennifer kind of God of my understanding. So, and whether it was the religion's definition of it, or what I understood as a child, of my perception of what it was. But being able to grow that understanding in the rooms really changed my life for the better.
Amazing. But there's many points there I wanted to pick up on with the higher power myself as well. And to me, it's about dropping the ego. If we stay on our heads and we think we've got it all sorted, we'll just fix this and we'll be fine. We'll go back to whatever we want. It's not possible, and that's a gift in itself. So God, to me, I was explained, I'm not religious at all. I wasn't brought up religious, but gift of desperation. That's what got me in. So I was quite happy with that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have walked into what, let's face it, some rather badly lit, strange rooms that are right next to a church. And if you're not into that, then it's going to put you off straight away. And everyone's talking about emotions and sober, and it can be strange from the outside. Took me a while to get used to it. Like I say, it took a year before going in and out and eventually stopping that I accepted it because I really wanted it. But it has to be something that gets us out of our heads so that there is something else. And to me, yeah, it's anything. Luckily, I'm sitting here at night on this balcony and I'm looking at the stars, and that fits for me. But a higher power. And it's a beautiful thing that they did in AA at the beginning is I believe there was I think it was the Oxford group who was quite religious. And then he went and it was Bill, who was like, he wasn't religious. And he came up with like the higher power, something else. And Carl Jung was involved as well at the beginning, how it is a spiritual program, but whatever that means to you. And I got it after about 6 months, didn't really get into meditation at first with it, but I did understand it was a spiritual program. And that's what we needed inside of us. There's a spiritual malady in any addict. You need to address or just look at things in a very different way. Some people it happens like that. Other people it takes time, and some it just doesn't fit. But I'm a true believer. You've got to knock that ego on the head pretty damn quick and go in there and, like you say, be totally honest. And I resisted the prayer as well. I did, like you, I did do it, but I didn't do it that fastidiously, but I did do it, and it did make a difference. And to me, it really relates with the things I'm doing now with breathwork. It's just a different way of changing the brain. So it doesn't have to be God, but essentially you're like, step 3 as well. It's a beauty, because I read it as do as best you can. Do as best you can. Don't forget action. Because I think sometimes people forget you've got to make an effort, you know? Don't forget action, do the best you can. But if you're going to obsess about something, which any addict will, you're just going to go around in circles. So get to the point where you can do as much as you can, but having these words in your mind, which says, okay, then you can leave it, which is manifestation as well. Get to the point, want it, do it, make an effort, but you don't have to grab it. Just see if it happens, if the universe will make it work for you, if it's right. Now, it all sounds a bit wishy-washy, and did to me at the time, but as I saw it working over time, and then I saw it with myself and other people, and then other people tell you the difference in yourself. And then later with the breath work and the law of attraction, this thing's just a machine. So if we get this machine working in our own way, instead of the old hypnosis of the subconscious, which, like religion, if that's brought into you in certain countries or places that heavy religion from an early age, you're going to believe it. And I truly believe there's a lot of guilt and shame that comes from that, which every addict who walks into a room has got guilt and shame as number one, and usually hiding. So if you don't wipe some of those away, and I see it in 1 or 2 people I know now, and they can't quite wipe that away, the guilt, the shame, the hiding, it just perpetuates itself. You get to 2 weeks, you get to a year maybe, and you just go back. So again, as I was talking to different people with these things and other people outside of them, that AA doesn't work, and you're not even supposed to say AA, say it's a 12-step program, but I'm kind of quite open with it. My idea is to do these to get other people to see it, to say that you're not alone as well, because the opposite is connection to me. But AA isn't for everyone, because I'd like to go to a point. For me, it worked, and I took the time, took a year doing the steps, and it changed the habit. Instead of going to the off license for the beer or whatever at any time of the day, which was morning for me, but then it turned around to going to meetings, and I didn't want to at first, but it turned to the habit. And even when I didn't want to, because it was an ingrained habit, I went, and I'd always get something out of it. It's really ourselves, you know, and you'd have empathy for other people, for yourself, and it took time, but it really, really worked. But there's something someone else mentioned recently, and also about Bill, who came, one of the founders of AA, and about how he had a traumatic childhood that it's not really addressed that much in AA. I believe the subject comes up, but it's more of a program where you get to just live your life as best you can. You don't have to analyze everything and go over the past, but you do your best to others, look at your behavior, make amends. And I agree with nearly all of it. Some of the words can be quite old-fashioned and stuff, but I am actually also interested in trauma. But trauma can be a big fat word. It doesn't have to be. Trauma can be many different situations that if we deny it, then we're not accepting it or relating to it or whatever it may be. It's different for everyone. So I'm interested on your perspective to do the 12 steps or things you might have done yourself to address or to look at that trauma, whatever it may be, whether it was a serious one or whether it was something that was just passive. How did you cope with that? What did you look at in yourself, and what was the result?
So honestly, the trauma piece of it, I don't believe for me was addressed through 12-step programs. And I believe that they helped, I know it helped me put down the drugs and alcohol long enough to be able to start the healing process. But the trauma piece specifically really was when I started doing work outside of there, one-on-one with a therapist, but then also the biggest game changer for me for the trauma piece was when I started breath work. And Nicole had led me in that direction purposefully. She knew that, and she said to me, she said, you know, Jen, in just a couple breathwork sessions, her own experience, she felt like she'd done years of therapy. And I found the same, the shedding of the pain of the trauma that I carried in different places. And I didn't know necessarily that that was going to happen. And like the first couple breathwork sessions, I cried the entire time. Like my ears were filled with tears, is what I'd tell people. And I didn't know that was going to happen. I didn't know. I mean, I was living a pretty good life at that time, outward, you know, seemingly. You know, I'm still married with Rob. We have actually 2 daughters. I have 3 daughters total. I have a, you know, a job and a career that I really love and am passionate about, and just didn't really place a lot on. I knew there was work left to do. I do know. I think there always will be. It's an onion. It's beautiful that way. I'm not afraid of that anymore. But I didn't realize just how much of that trauma would be addressed through breathwork. And it's been beautiful to continue that journey and to know. A couple interesting facts about Bill W. that I have just recently learned. And he got clean through going into a treatment program that used psychedelics. I don't know.
I did know about it, but I didn't know that's how he completely got clean. But I knew that he tried some, but it wasn't really addressed in AA.
No, it's not, is it? I just learned this and I was just like mind blown, because I have been very interested in seeing how addiction and psychedelics medicinally play out as this plant medicine that we have that can help to change those neural pathways and clear out some of this stuff for people. Belladonna, I guess, is the name of the plant medicine that was used. It was a 5-day program, and what he said when he went through it was that he had a spiritual awakening.
Bingo. Yeah.
Which I think is interesting. AA and NA talk about a spiritual awakening, but they didn't really say for sure. So, you know, like I think there's a lot to the addiction and recovery world that's just being uncovered.
Yes.
And it's beautiful. And honestly, breath work for me, there are times that I feel like I have not experimented yet with any sort of medicinal psychedelics, but I feel like breath work without any psychedelics, that's what happens. Like it takes me to places and accesses parts of my brain that were inaccessible before. And it is this high that I've never experienced from anything else that I've put external, internal. It's all in there. We have everything. We have everything we need right here. It's just learning to tap into it and that it's there. And so much of our world and our experience every day from birth forward tells us the exact opposite. In order for our economic system to thrive, we have to believe that what we need is out there, that we have to buy it, consume it, get it, wear it, use it, drink it, smoke it, whatever, and consume. And that shift for me to, nope, everything I need is right here has been huge. And breath work has, I mean, this is not an ad for you or what you do intentionally, but breath work has changed my world. And I've been listening to other podcasts lately with jujitsu fighters and people from the health and wellness community who do adaptogen, mud water type coffee alternatives, and breath work just is interlaced in every single one of their stories as well. And so many of the people I connect with online through podcasts were addicts who have found breath work. It's such a common thread that I believe that our recovery programs should start with that. You know, early on, you know, I didn't do AA. AA for me was a scary place. AA talks a lot more about the God of religion in there. They do the Our Father. And I was just like, I couldn't at that time be open-minded in AA. I also knew myself well enough that I couldn't have a pass to be able to pick up chips and still be using any sort of drugs, because you can take pharmaceuticals and smoke pot and still be picking up chips in AA. I needed a program for me personally that was abstinent of all drugs and alcohol for me. So I did NA, and then my train derailed. Our Father. What had we just said?
The Our Father, the drugs, and you didn't take any with the AA, but you went to NA?
Yep, I did NA because they were, a complete abstinent program. I don't know, my train really derailed on that. Maybe it'll come back. But I was grateful that when I got to NA that they didn't incorporate that super religious type of,
Right.
So that I could hear the message a little. Oh, so when we first get there, that we need to hear the message and see what it's about. But then I feel like we need to be able to incorporate more of these tools into a recovery program.
It's so true, and it brings me to what I'm like. Okay, so I have my own passion with this subject, and it just always comes up. Breath work, I would say I was recovered to the time when I started it, but with the feeling and the first major session with the Wim Hof when I decided to be an instructor like that was 200 people, and then talk about energy in the room and our own energy expanding with the rhythmical breathing, but then the breath holds, and then whatever, and the words on top, huge release, like tears and everything, just letting it out in a particularly shitty mood that day, and it boom, not in a bad way, or good stuff coming out, and I felt great, and I had little visions. And I have done since as well, but I've also done ayahuasca and mushrooms occasionally, not like on a regular basis. But the thing I like with some of the people in the 12 step, oh, don't do it, you can't do it, and it's going to be addicted to that. I'm like, no, man, alcohol's my problem. I'm not touching it anymore. I've got that now, But the other ones did help me. So I would say breath work and mushrooms for me, and ayahuasca a few times, not much, has made a big difference because the breath work is accessible at any time. And I've got these new ones now, like tools and techniques, short ones, man. Because like it puts people off. I've got to do like an hour breathing and all this. No, 1 minute I can help you.
1 to 3 minutes. Yes.
Yes. And then that can give you the impetus maybe to do a longer one. I do nearly all the tools all the time. I don't do the long meditations. 15 minutes is probably the longest. And I should do a little bit more because I find the meditation really, really powerful because we knock out that default mode network when we're holding our breath, when we're in the rhythm, and then we can communicate with the subconscious and change a few things because that baby rules the day. It's just nature. So all those beliefs that we've got, like you mentioned, limiting beliefs before, they're all in there, the good ones, the bad ones. But I'm doing some work at the moment about how we can change that. And a lot of the meditations I do are about that. You're looking at one thing, then you look at it a different way, and you see it and feel it in your body. That's the power. But the breath work affects the body. So it's somatic work that really can make a change in the body. I mean, it varies every time, but also I've said it many times, like it's said that it can release DMT, but I'm 99.9% sure. There's just, they've proved it in rats, but not in humans. Some people say it, so I might as well say it as well. I say a DMT experience. And like you said, it's all inside our body. Pharmaceuticals are just basically, I don't understand it fully, but they've taken these particular things and figured them out and packaged them. So then we have to buy
our body already makes. Yes, that our body already makes.
Yes. And how the mind can control this as well. And I'm talking to many different people at the moment and learning a lot, which I feel I know, but I don't know like a huge amount about. But I'm learning more and more about how these emotions, the way we feel, really affect us. I don't go around and go, yeah, I've got it now, I'm sorted because the mind. No, I'm totally all over the place. But I have these tools that I can use and go, hang on, why is my back feeling really bad again and a lot of pain? Well, because of this, this, and this. Okay, so what can I do? I can try and avoid the thought, or I can accept it, feel it, let it go and go through me in some way, do some breath work, do some other things, but at least I have an idea now of what it is. The last time I had it really bad, it was like 6 weeks and it wouldn't go. And the one thing that I did eventually was scream on a beach. I was like, I have had enough. I want to go back on my moto. And the chiropractor was saying, no, you can't. Screaming on the beach in the middle of the night and stuff. And it was such a release because I made that decision, because I'd released. It really took a couple of days and it was gone. So we've got to find ways to release from the body, but also address some of the trauma. There's many different ways of coming about all these things. And some people are quite strict. This is the way, or I believe that and I don't believe that. I think we should be open to all of them. I really, really do. And just learn as much, because like someone else said the other day, depends on what is your ignition. What is your key? What is the little thing that's going to get it for you? That's going to go, yeah, I'll do that. And that's helping me. For me, it did work for me, the 12 steps. It really did. I made the effort and I enjoyed it. And a change in, was it a miracle? Because again, coming from non-religious, miracle, what? A miracle is a change in perception, man. It's that simple, you know, and it all relates into NLP and all these other things, which is all ancient tools as well, that we can change the way we think. And then it goes back to connection. So I don't knock AA at all, but I do find it lacking in some areas, and I do see how it's off-putting. But what you're saying, I like a lot, because it brings me to the point I wanted to say that I'm now at this basic steps of creating like a course program for addiction, but with breath work and meditation, because I know it's going to help.
Yep.
How it comes out, I don't know. So this could be a conversation for us another day, even, because someone else in New York is the same, wants to work with kids, wants to bring breath work in, and with addicted people. So I've got to figure out, I feel it and I know it, but to compact it so it doesn't piss people off, it's actually enjoyable, and there's work to do there, which is going to help everyone, not people who are just completely addicted, but people later on, like the 7-day challenge now. It's just a few questions and ideas to look at behaviors, rather than like, got to solve this problem now. No, look at behavior and see if that can make a difference, and connect. And I'm going to try and get people to do this magic thing. We'll record on this and post videos online. And a lot of people don't want to, but I'm doing another challenge where people are doing it. And the change is unbelievable just in connected. I didn't know such and such about you, and I feel like that. And that's what I do in my workshops as well. I do like the minute thing, talk to this person, talk to that person, exchange. And then you start letting things out. And then someone in the corner says something you didn't want to say, but it makes you want to say it. Because like you said, you're not alone.
And chemicals start getting excreted into our brains. That those happy hormones, that connection, that
serotonin, all these oxytocin,
exactly.
all that.
Yes, oxytocin.
Yeah, in general it does that, but also a good conversation, a good connection.
The eye-to-eye connection, that verbal connection. Like it's so much of our world has programmed us away from all of that, and it's coming back. So it's interesting. Elizabeth and I are very, very drawn and feel with a deep knowing that she and I are meant to work here locally in the same modality, combining everything that we've learned over these last years and putting it all together so that people have so many options for recovery, that it's not, because there isn't, I don't believe there is, none of us got where we are one way. So there's not one way out. And like, I said, I believe the 12 steps save lives every single day. I am forever grateful for NA. But they talked about prayer and meditation, but the meditation piece, they don't really understand.
I know. My sponsor was well intended, but I was asked what he did. He told me what to do, what he did, and I was looking at the intelligence of a tree and trying to meditate, and I got there for 3 minutes. Then I started thinking about the washing, which is part of meditation, to recognize the thought and go, okay. But I didn't really get taught much, and it wasn't much in AA. It was only afterwards when I got into it, through transcendental meditation, through just doing chakras. And for me, I never go for anything unless I can feel it. One of my mottos is, if you don't have to understand it, you got to feel it. That's why I'm doing the course with the coaches. I'm like, you got bits of information in there, and I go into the science a bit, but I'm not obsessed with that. And I'm like, learn this, learn that, but you got to feel it. So what, if you do this breathing technique now, how do you feel? If you don't do it, you can't teach it. And if you feel something for it, the reason why you're here, then you're going to be able to teach it so much easier. And you got to do it that way. So it's a huge thing for me, that one. But what you're saying about the different styles and types, that really intrigues me as well. Because I'm like, how to get this stuff out there so it's accessible. And that's one of my keys with what I'm doing. It's accessible. I'm totally normal in my way, which is like a bit energetic and all over, but that's what brings other people that wouldn't normally do it, hopefully. So what I've actually done is not change myself at all. And it's about swearing and stuff. I swear, I do this, I fall over, I make mistakes, and I keep saying, don't worry. I've been there a million times where the music's gone off. I've gone out of thing. I didn't know what I was saying. You just go back into it, because the more real you are, the more real other people are with you. It's so funny in classes. Sometimes I get there and then people are all sitting down and you've been there. Everyone's patient, expecting the teacher to do stuff. And I purposely try and break that within a minute. I'm like, oh, okay, it relaxes everyone, And this is what we can bring into, because again, that's the same as you. God bless it, the 12 steps and all that. But if we can bring a way which is more accessible, more easy, if you like, I do believe there's work to be done. But giving people tools to feel different and then think different with the meditation side, without scaring them with meditation.
Right.
Right. You
don't have to sit on a pillow for 45 minutes and listen to some.
Go to a class. Where everyone's so special. It's all so quiet. I mean, God bless them.
Where at the end I feel nothing and everyone's talking about what they felt, and I'm like, what am I gonna feel?
And it's like, I know, I don't buy it, and I still have this little bit of a chip on my shoulder. I'm here in Thailand with the Kopangan crew. They're a bit too special for me, man. And I see a lot of people who are like bought into something, and I don't see much change. And I see it all, we'll have to do this, we have to do that, we have to pray. Just do what the fuck you want. And I come from the energy side, so let's bring a fucking energy out there as quick as possible and make it accessible. We don't have to sit around in a circle and talk. Let's jump around in a circle. Let's talk afterwards, having a coffee. Don't matter, you know. You never really know what's going to happen in those workshops. But on that point, maybe that's another conversation, because this is what I want to do very, very quickly. I might even, because I'm a bit of a perfectionist, do something kind of quickly that I know is still going to be good, but just know that you're going to build on it later, you know?
Okay.
That type of thing.
My computer just told me my battery is low and it's plugged in. So just so you know, I may lose you.
Oh, what's the percentage on the battery?
It says 12.
Oh, we're getting close. Okay, well, I might have to wrap it up slightly. Okay, but any final word? You covered a lot. Any final words for someone who's really right now in the middle of an addictive behavior, habit, whatever you want to call it? What advice can you give them?
Ask for help. Know that there's someone out there that has been where you are, has gone through what you're going through, and reach out to, whether it's a stranger, whether it's someone you know close to you, ask for help. Like there's somebody there that's willing to help you, and we can't do it alone.
Perfect. I totally agree. Opposite of addiction is connection.
I love that's one of your mottos. I love that. I firmly believe that in all of my soul. My addiction drove me as far away from connection, and connection is like top 3 on my things that I need to be a happy, healthy person. Connection is like top 3.
Everyone is. We're coming from the tribes, and now we're all sitting in our little houses on our own, especially in the West. And it makes a huge impact on our mental and emotional state, especially with this pandemic and stuff. It's no joke, but it really goes back to that. If we had the connection, if we had the nurture, and then like not so much blame and guilt and fear, then I believe it'd be a lot easier to get through. I really, really do, and we wouldn't need that so much. And a lot of the addicts, and Gabor Mate goes on about this a lot of the addicts have really got genuine big traumas that need to be dealt with and haven't. So you're stigmatized when you start taking drugs, especially heavy drugs. You can get away with it with alcohol unless you're in pain. But the other drugs, you're stigmatized and you're stuck in a hole and you go into prison. There's got to be another way of looking at it, because like you said before, here's the pill, take that. The pill doesn't address the problem. The pill just stops the pain for a short while and then turns you onto the pill, or even brings you back. I've heard so many stories, and luckily I never got into that side of things. But there's a whole of the conversation there, which might come out over more and more of these conversations that I'm having with people. But it's really interesting, amazing story, and thanks a lot for sharing it.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for doing this work and helping as many people as we can through it. So.
With on that point as well, try this little 7-day challenge addiction.
I signed up for it this morning.
Great. And anyone else, just pass it on, man. But the idea, we're going to share in the group. We're going to make silly little videos. I've already got 2 ideas. I know what I need to stop in 7 days, and they're both embarrassing, but I'm going to say them. It's the only way.
Awesome.
Honesty. If you can't be honest with someone else, you can't be honest with yourself.
Amen.
Well, look, that's fascinating and beautiful, and thank you very much. But this has to be continued, this conversation about like what you're doing with addicts and stuff, and me as well, and we can maybe build something or just help each other out along the way. I
absolutely believe that we were meant to meet and grow this together. This whole community needs us. So
fantastic. Thank you very much, Jennifer.
Thank you, Greg. Yep. Bye.
Bye-bye. Ciao, ciao, ciao.